Welcome to Costly Conversations. I'm super excited because we have Carbon Q on with us today. How you doing?
Hi, how are you? Hi,
Good.
everyone.
Hey. And just a quick point of housekeeping. If you want to support the show, the conversation is brought to you by the patrons. So support the show. Go to the link down below and you can be invited into the world of Costly community. And we're doing all sorts of fun stuff, including having private conversations with some of your favorite guests. So be sure to come on, see what's going on, see what all the fuss is about, and get down in the comment section. Let us know what you liked about the show. And of course, if there's something you disagree with, let us know, but be intelligent. Okay. Thank you. So Carbon Q, super excited to have you on. I know you kind of been
Yeah.
in the gun community. That's kind of where I met you, but you do a lot more than just firearms. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, just by nature of just being alive, you do a lot more than just firearms. Let's talk about you a little bit. Who are you?
Carbon Q, retired from New York City Department of Corrections, mom of a great son who's a Marine right now. Just your average person. I don't know. Just Carbon Q, just me.
Yes, I mean, really, it. I guess you would describe yourself as like a normal, everyday person. I know you do a lot of moderation work for some of the, I guess, some of the cool guys in the firearms 2A,
Mhm.
black 2A world, and I think that's really important because we need support. We need people who are willing to jump in and be a part of conversations, to help clean up the comment section when things get kind of crazy, people get out of control, and to really just add something, add some value to what we do. When I say we, just everybody in the space of 2A, the black 2A
Mhm.
space, and just trying to get better together,
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, I'm not going to monopolize the whole conversation, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about a few things. I know you said you just got off a live talking about preparedness and whatnot, and I know that's something you're super passionate about. Can we talk about that?
Sure. So I just got off a live at a regular gun guys channel in its regards to prepping. And within our community, I think it's important for our community to prep for anything that's going to happen. You see so many disasters happen and we're not ready for it because I think sometimes we live in a bubble that it can't happen to us until it happens to us. So being prepared kind of eases a lot of stress and worry. Of course, you're still going to stress and worry because something is going on out of the norm, but it just makes it that much easier to know that you can maintain whether you're staying in your home or you have to evacuate. You have certain things packed away, ready to go. So if you do have to leave, you can still maintain your regular life. It may be scaled down quite a bit, but you'll be able to maintain wherever it is that you have to go.
So, are you trying to tell me that prepping and preparedness isn't just about the zombie apocalypse or some like end game scenario, nuclear war with Russia? Not to make a joke about that situation, being that there's some weird stuff happening in the news,
Mhm.
but it's not just
Yeah.
about that.
Nope, it's not just about that. Anything can happen. Look at the job market. So many people are out of work or went out of business due to the pandemic, and
Hmm.
lifestyles have changed greatly. Families are moving in with other people or losing their homes, and they can only take but so much with them. You want to take those essential things that you can actually survive off of wherever it is that you end up, whether it's a shelter or, worst case scenario, you're out on the street. You want to be able to at least survive it so you can come back from it. Hopefully things turn around. You're able to protect yourself as well. It's not just about having a backpack full of stuff. Protecting your family, yourself, so you can get back to a regular lifestyle if that ever comes back around. I
That's
don't think things
interesting.
are yeah.
Yeah, because it's realistic for us because here in Texas, we recently had a little bit of a freeze, and it wasn't anywhere near as bad as last year, where
Right.
last year people actually died. Like it was pretty serious. I remember the second show ever that I
Mhm.
did with Costly Conversations here. We were talking about that. Like it
Mhm.
was still happening. Like my first ever episode, I was wearing a puffer jacket, and my boy was like, "Bro, when you were recording, were you cold or something?" I'm like, "Yeah, because it was like 2 degrees outside. We're not used to that. My house isn't built for that." And just kind of being prepared for even surviving in your own home, or what happens when your power goes out. Like, do you have any sort of backup stuff? Some guys in my gun club, they said, yeah, like, hey, I've got a small solar generator, so like I don't have to worry about like fuel. But I'm sure there's even some things that maybe you would suggest for different scenarios. Like even just talking about like surviving the cold, we're still kind of coming out of winter. Like, what do you suggest in regards to being prepared for, I guess, just some cold?
Alternative fuel, butane is a beautiful thing. It can power so many things. You'll be surprised that a candle can change the degrees in a room by just lighting it. You can make candles out of Crisco and some cotton string. There's a lot of new items like a Mr. Buddy. You can use it with butane and it gives off heat without you having to plug it in or a solar generator because it is butane, but it gives you some more. Getting a tent and huddling your family into a tent at night, even if it's in your house, there's no heat, body heat, the tent is insulated. You kind of keep that heat within there so people stay warm or your
Wow.
family stay warm. Yeah, just
Yeah.
getting wool blankets. And sometimes it's just like basic things, making sure you have a wool blankets available. A tent, as crazy as it sounds, set it up in your living room, push the furniture back, and the body heat, the Mr. Buddy. There's there's another thing. It'll come back to me, but it's a small stove, but you can actually put it in the middle and it generates heat out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Terracotta pots, you can put a candle in the middle of it. The terracotta kind of holds the heat so it radiates out.
Wow.
If you have kids, you want to be careful with it, but you can always use things like you have to get a little bit inventive with the things that you have around. Just cover it up, but at least there's heat there and you can survive until the next morning or whatever else comes along. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean
there's
that's really interesting. I,
yeah.
was there anything else, or
I was trying to remember the name of the other thing, but I guess it'll come back to me in a
it'll
second.
come back? Man, it's really interesting because there's all sorts of stuff. Like even if in the dead of summer, like if you look at California, they had rolling blackouts where they said, "Hey, I know you're paying for this electricity and all,
Mhm.
but we can't really keep this. We can't keep this relationship going. So we're just gonna go out for a few minutes, let y'all burn up in the house, and then we'll come back." And like if you live where I live, it gets
Mhm.
hot. I could not imagine being like, well, I'm just gonna stay outside all day in the dead of summer when it can be like 103 outside. Now it's not
Yeah.
normally 103, but
Mhm.
imagine. Now if you're in your home and you're running into a situation where the heat's just incredible,
Yeah.
what would
Um,
you recommend for something like that?
so I would get a solar generator.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, you have a lot of heat, and if you get there's an AC that actually works off the generator. There's a prepper by the name of Lady Farmer 73 who does an extensive videos on different types of generators. And he actually plugs in different appliances, shows you how to read it so you can use it with during any type of weather. So he's really good at doing that. If you can, you should check it out. You can use a generator. When it comes to the heat, it's a little. It's not that it's worse than the cold, but there's a lot of people on medication.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they have a portable. It's a cooler, and you can plug it into a generator, but it keeps insulin and things like that cold for people who have to take medication, especially older people
Mm-hmm.
and even some young. But there's a lot of appliances out there that you might have to pay a little bit of money because some of those things are expensive. But in the instant that something like that happens and it's life threatening because you do take medication, you kind of want to fight and just have it there. They have different forms to it. The heat, water. Now, water is very important in any weather. However, stock up on your water because the best way to keep cool is to drink water. It's
Mm-hmm.
body's natural way of doing it. Um, if you put sheets up at your door and just wet them, it kind of when the breeze comes through, even though it's hot, it when it goes through the wet sheet, it cools the place off a little bit.
Wow.
the cooler, yeah, feel to it. So there's a lot of like old school stuff that you can do, but it does help when you're in a situation where you have very little to work with.
That's incredible. And I appreciate, I know this isn't the general format of the show to talk about, like, what can you do to survive the apocalypse? But, like, there, unfortunately, even just looking at it, like I said, around this time last year for me, like life was fine for me and my family, but there were a lot of families in a really rough shape where there were pipes bursting and things like that, and a lot of people's homes became truly unlivable. And so being able to say like, hey family, we're going to get out of here and we're going to go stay with your aunt up in,
Mhm.
you know, some place where it's a little bit better, or even going into like a natural sheltered, um not a natural shelter, but like a local shelter to protect your
Mhm.
family, like regardless of your pride in a situation like that. Like there are options, but obviously you want to be prepared to kind of be in that situation.
Mhm.
I suppose by having some sort of like bag or kit or a box, or like what do you do if you have to leave your dwelling?
That's I just did a bug out bag today. So I plan to bug in if there's anything going on crazy. You're in the comfort of your home, you kind of know your home very well, so you know what you're working with. But in the instance where, pipes are bursting, you can't stay there. I have a bug out bag that has about 3 days worth of things that I would need to survive, which is water, fire, shelter, and of course I have my firearms. And you would want it's just packed in hygiene. So you pack stuff to where you can quickly take care of yourself. You won't be eating like you normally would eat at home, but you do have something. There's protein bars. They come in really, really small sizes. Put a couple of those inside your bag because you can also use that for bartering. The little coffee packets. Put that in because you're going to need some strength to get from point A to point B if you can't get to your car or your car is underwater and you have to hike it. You're going to need some type of fuel to get you going and keep you going. Have that stocked and ready to go. I had just showed it on the show today, so I took everything out. It's a whole mess right here.
Oh, don't worry about
I
it.
wish I had it together to
Yeah.
show it. With a bug out bag, when you pack it, everything is personal. You have to pack it to you. You would have to do a bug out bag to your wife because women have different needs versus men. So we might have some extra stuff that you guys don't have. The weight of the bag, how it fits to your body, being physically fit to be able to hike 3 miles or more with that. Um, just having like a fishing pole, a small, um, like a small compact fishing pole where it has everything inside of it. Do I even have that right next to me? I thought I did have it. It's small. Oh, here it is, right here. So this is the fishing pole, right? This is the part, and on the inside it has everything that you need to catch fish.
Wow.
Yeah. If you need to get some food, depending on where you're living. If there's a lake nearby, it has the weights. I don't know if you can see it.
Wow. Yeah, I can see it there. There's a flotation, the weights, the hooks, everything is there.
Everything. So you just wrap some tape around it because tape is always good. Get a cut, injury, and you don't have any bandages, slap some tape on it until you can get someplace to fix it. Comes with instructions, just little things like that. Silicate key, water key. Any buildings, municipal buildings, they're going to have a spigot on the outside, but it has these funny little
Mm-hmm.
shapes that from the outside. So if you need to get water, you can get water from the building. Let it run first because sometimes it may be sitting for a while, and you bear up. These are all some of the things that's inside my bug out bag. Something to cook my food.
That's a small pot for the listening audience.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Right. It's a small pot. Comes with fork, spoon, and a burner that you can have fire to it. MREs, any of the freeze dried foods that they have. They usually will have 2 servings in them, so you can just add water to it, cook it, and you have some type of food. Those are my bags. Change of clothes, good boots. Is you never know where you're gonna have to walk, and if you always want to take care of your feet. Let's see, my bug bag. It also has an axe, a saw, and a very long knife. It's almost a machete, but it's not as yet.
No, what's
Just
that, to protect you against the wild hogs? Out here in Texas, we got those.
well, oh, do you? So yeah, you can use it for that. But also, if you need to clear the area, you need to get firewood. You would use your saw just to keep your warmth or whatever. Axe again to cut down to build shelter. If you don't already have a tent, a sleeping bag, um, a pad, a tarp. Tarps are great. You can make a tent out of a tarp. It can protect you from the elements. Tarp is used for so many things. It's an amazing little item to have. It's not little, but it's amazing to have in your bag because you can use it for anything.
Hmm.
Let's see, medication. If you take medication, you should have a stash inside there. Any other type of medications, because you're out in the woods, most people have allergies. You might want to throw some of that inside there. Aspirins. All of these things you can also use to barter with somebody else for something that you don't have. So when you prep with your bag, you want to prep with things that you can also use to get things that you may need.
Should you prep
Like
cash?
absolutely, you should prep cash, small notes, not big notes, like $5, because 9 times out of 10 people won't have change. So just small notes. Keep a record of personal information. Xerox in a bag, waterproof bag, just in case if you lose your wallet or you ran out before you can get it. You have that already inside your bag. You can just go out. A ham radio is great to have so you can pay attention to what's going on in the vicinity. Also, call for help. Solar cell phone charger. So you can always have access to your phone. It's not like back in the day we used to remember everybody's number. If our phones went out, we're just all messed up. So just
Yeah,
to keep
we're in trouble.
yeah, just to
Should maybe you keep like a small phone book of at least some important numbers, people that
absolutely,
you could access for help?
absolutely you should that should be in your important documents like your birth certificate, your driver's license, social security card, work ID, passport, just copies of it, and a paper with all the numbers or addresses. Because if your phone's out and you don't know where you are or you don't know how to navigate by reading a map, you can give the address and maybe somebody can help you. Flashlights, headlamps, a utility knife that has different things on it in case you need to screw anything. Take it off, put it on. There's like so many things that you can do, but when you do your bug out bag, you want to break it down to the bare essentials because you have to carry it.
Right.
The heavier it
Right.
is, just for you to motivate what it is. So
Yeah. No, I think I guess from an outsider's perspective, because I don't really live in the world of like preparedness. I wonder if people, even like me, or people who aren't in it like yourself, if we really understand, like, hey, you can't bring your Xbox. I mean, obviously you can't do that, but like
right.
the creature comforts, like how much of that do you bring with you for your own sanity, and how much of it do you just say like, nah, if we're in a situation, we're just going to be in that situation. If it's the end of the world, or if it's just like a 2 day thing where the snow's just kind of crazy, like we'll have to live with it.
One thing you want to do is keep your head. So just adding a pack of playing cards. You'll be surprised there's so many games that you can play with just a pack of playing cards, especially if you have children. You can give it to them. It kind of keeps them out of your way for a little bit so you can think and plan and do what you got to do. It also gives you something to do instead of to just wind down for a bit and bring it down to a out of panic state.
Hmm.
Dice. There's like so many things that you do. But again, you want to bring things that are going to be light and not cumbersome to carry. So
Well,
I always go with
firearms
Mhm.
are extremely heavy. Like if you really understand the types of guns you can bring, like I understand like
Mhm.
ARs and other maybe smaller pistols like handguns aren't super heavy, but
Mhm.
that if we're talking about just pounds in actual
Right.
weight compared to what
Mhm.
most hikers deal with, that's like real heavy. Especially if you get into like ammo, like a box of
Yes.
200 rounds is super heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think in those situations, for me, when it comes to firearms, I just want firearms for protection. But it's a hobby for a lot of people where they like guns and they buy a lot of guns, and that's great too. But for prepping situations, I would be more concerned with the weight of my ammo, and I would just probably take one long arm and a pistol with me, unless other members of my family are able to shoot and can handle the weight, then yeah, I would put something on them too. But other than that, that's gonna be it for me. Like at some point, I'm okay with the idea that I might not survive this, but I'm going to survive as long as I can.
All right. Well, that's actually a really dark thing to say. I
But
appreciate you saying it.
yeah, I think when I look at it like that, it makes me worry less because I don't psych myself up for something that could possibly go wrong.
Yeah.
If it does go wrong, I expect that. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm going to do what I can to survive it.
How much ammo do you think that you need to bring with you? And after that, can we talk a little bit about medical training?
Okay. I think you should be able to take as much ammo as you can carry. Because again, if you can't carry it, it's going to hold you down and you're not going to be able to move. So take what you can carry and use it wisely. If you don't have to use your firearm and you can utilize your knife, use your knife. That's why you should have a knife. You should have several knives because at some point ammo is going to run out, regardless if you use it wisely or not. You have a secondary backup weapon, which will be your knife. You can have pepper spray. You can have several other things that are way lighter. So put those
I mean,
in.
if we're being honest, things like a knife has unlimited utility. Should you carry a knife sharpener? Because if you're using your knife regularly, I mean, it sounds like I already answered the question. But I know you said like bring a couple knives. I'm like, well, should you bring like one knife and a knife sharpener, or like two or three plus?
Um,
Like, what are you doing?
so I have two knives, two large knives, I should say, and then I have a tactical one, and then I have just a straight edge one, and then I have smaller knives, right? So I have about five of them altogether, but all different sizes for
Mm-hmm.
different reasons. Definitely have a sharpener because you're going to need to sharpen those things. Not only that, you might have to sharpen your axe after cutting down different trees and chopping here and there or using it for self-defense. You're going to need to sharpen those things. If you get those things, get a full tang. So when you do have to use your sharpener, it doesn't mess with the integrity of the blade. It doesn't fold it or make it too thin.
Mm-hmm.
If you get like a cheap knife, you might, sharpen it down and then it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to invest in your knife with a full tang knife. It's one piece of steel running through and it's pretty thick. So when
Yeah.
you sharpen, it's all good.
Wow, that's important. I know I said I wanted to talk a little bit about medical. Can we just get into that? Like, what kind of medical training should you pursue? Obviously, you can't just go out and get it tonight. But say I'm like, shoot, I gotta get something to survive things that could
Yeah.
happen, reasonable
Mhm.
events. What do
So I
you
would
suggest?
CPR, stop the bleed classes. Uh, what is the other one? A basic first aid class just to deal with breaks, sprains, how to address them, how to move the patient. You also want to take a class where they would show you if somebody is under a drug. There's a Narcan. There's an item called Narcan because that is a problem nowadays. You might run into people, especially in depressing times. A lot of people use drugs to cope with it. You might need to save somebody's life. You want to learn how to use Narcan the correct way. So it depends on the area and the people that you're dealing with. But I think those three are like the biggest. There's other training like medical training, North Florida Tactical does, where they actually show you how to do stop the bleed in a combat type situation. So you understand what it feels like when bullets are flying and you still have to address somebody's medical needs. Yeah. And even with
Yeah,
that, be physically fit because you might have to carry somebody or drag them
yeah, that
along with your.
sounds like a rough situation. I actually know a company that I met up with when I went to Epic Shoot, and they sell basically custom medical kits. And
Mhm.
if I can get a link for them, I'll put it down below. If not, well, don't worry about it. But ultimately, they were telling me about this pack that they had set up for a lady, custom made for this lady who she was saying like, hey, my bug out plan may
Mhm.
include me having to basically hike a few miles to without my car.
Mhm.
So I would like to have like a satchel type device where I can have it in addition to my bag or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I don't know her exact mentality behind the bag setup. I'd have to ask her. But I thought it was like, man, there are certain companies that go out of their way to make good products for people who would like to be prepared for adverse situations.
Mm-hmm.
Are are there any like ideal setups for medical in regards to, I guess, your ideal situation and an
Um,
unideal situation?
so my medical bag has sutures. It has a gun stapler. It has splints, a lot of
You
dressings,
said a staple gun?
a staple gun. Instead
Mm.
of doing it with the needle and thread, you can just pop the gun right on it, close it up. And then
Oh,
there's easier ways to do it where you can get skin glue and just seal it up, wrap it up. You need to have things for gunshot wounds, which is completely different from your first aid kit. That's a whole different set of things, and training is definitely needed with that.
chest seals, tourniquets, all that.
Mm-hmm. Vents, just the clotting equipment is just a lot, and the tourniquet you definitely have to know how to use it, otherwise you can damage somebody really bad,
Yeah.
and they can lose an arm, leg, wherever. So, yeah, those are. It definitely has more stuff. It has a lot of medication inside of it, just like aspirins. Um, you would need antibiotics. Fish antibiotics is the same as the antibiotics that your doctor gives you. So, in a worst case scenario, you can go to a pet store and get fish antibiotics and actually use that if you got an infection, depending on the type of infection. I suggest getting books that teach you how to do that. Yeah. And I learned that from a prepping community. And
That's
they're much,
interesting. Now,
yeah.
full
Mhm.
disclosure, we are
Right.
not doctors. This is not
Right. We are
medical
not doctors.
advice. However,
You should
you are an
check that.
adult
Yeah.
and you can make your own choices based on your own research. I'm not going to tell you how to live your
Absolutely.
life. If the world is coming to an end or you are seriously in trouble and need some sort of help, you make your own
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah.
Full
Matter of fact,
disclosure.
just look it up. It's something you can peruse if you want to. I don't suggest, and we don't suggest you do anything until you do your homework, right?
Research
But yep,
accordingly. Um,
absolutely.
Speaking of like really tough scenarios. We
Mhm.
have Hurricane Katrina and other natural disasters. I grew up in a place that had hurricanes regularly.
Mhm.
Thankfully, most of them were not seriously bad, but if you research Hurricane Hugo, it left my where I grew up in shambles for like about a year. Puerto Rico recently had a really, really bad hurricane that they're still recovering from in some capacity. Certain coastal towns and cities just deal with it in special ways. What I suppose, and maybe you won't tell me your exact code, but what is the moral code or code of ethics that one may adopt in an uncertain time? Because if it's not like the whole country is literally on fire, you're eventually going to go back to something. You have to come back to society eventually, maybe, hopefully. Um, what's the code?
To me, the code is prepping. If my neighbors and I are all on the same page in prepping, if a disaster comes through, we already have established a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
We already know that everybody has something to bring to the table, and we're all on the same page. When you have chaos like that, you are going to have people that are going to turn into something else because they're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, when you get hungry, you're just very angry or not too nice. And then on top of that, they lost so much. It's going to be ugly. But if you prep as a community and you set up things before things happen, if you know you have hurricanes, maybe setting up. They have these bunkers that you can put into the ground, coming together as a community, buying something where all the families can get into, or each family gets one, however if they wanted to work it out until it's over. And in there, you have your prepping stuff for everyone to at least survive it. I think at some point we all have to start learning to work together.
Mm-hmm.
When if I'm a prepper and you're not a prepper and something happens and you still see me with the lights on or cooking food and you're like, well, how did that happen? And you're hungry, at some point you're going to come see me, whether it's on a good note or not,
All right.
because you or your kids are hungry. But if we're all doing it, we all know what it is, and somewhere along the lines we're going to be okay. To me, that's the only way out of like situations like that, because that's those types of things create devastation for so many people at one time. It's hard to have a code if you didn't have it before. And in order to
Mm.
have a code, you have to have a community of people with like minds and working to survive something.
Wow. I appreciate you tackling that question because that's not something I necessarily
Get out the
prepped you
heart.
for, and it's not something that I think about often. Except for you hear people, especially in the gun communities that I hang out in, talk about like, if you're ever in a situation X Y Z, or get a gun, because you never know what could happen. Society could collapse tomorrow, and it's like, what, are you just going to shoot your neighbor? And you're gonna go shoot people? I'm not going to break the law just because society's collapsed, and people say stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, there might be certain rules that just don't apply, but ultimately, depending on how you look at the world, your worldview. Are you a person who believes in God and morality, or are you somebody who believes in a different code? Are you a person who's just survival of the fittest? Did you have no code before this whole thing happened? Like you said, like your code should govern you, but ultimately you're gonna kind of go to your most basic version of yourself.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't have to generally go through those things, but even
Hmm.
just coming close-ish to it, where people in my state perished in their own homes. We saw people get in their cars to kind of stay warm in a closed garage and die of carbon monoxide poisoning because they didn't kind of do they did the most efficient thing, but the most efficient thing wasn't safe.
Right.
Just
Mhm.
and then you see looting and stuff like that, and you're like, man, of course you're gonna need to eat, and you know the grocery store isn't open, so you're gonna have to get something. But at the end of the day, like, are you
Mhm.
gonna hurt somebody when they don't need to be hurt
Sure. Yeah.
because you didn't prepare?
Exactly. Exactly. It's people are unpredictable. You never know what somebody's gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you the more we become I don't want to say friendly, but the more we come together as communities. I think growing up, you had block parties, everybody knew each other. It's not like that anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
at some point, we're gonna have to get back to that because it's each one teach one, take care of one, right? Um, Hopefully, people get on board with that because your chances of surviving anything is better when you have a community at work. Some people may be good at security. Some people may be good at farming. Some people may
Mm-hmm.
be good at being doctors, teachers. You have your builders, your electrician people. When you have a community of people that can do different things like that, a community can survive if they all came together and they all had tents or tarps and set a fire so that the fire can warm everybody. Kind of like how they did the wagons back in the
Mm-hmm.
day, fire in the middle, just so people have some type of heat. But
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to go back to some of the old ways of how our grandparents did things or great grandparents did things and try to incorporate that into a modern day world.
Yeah.
Because when stuff does happen, all of those modern things go away and now you're just stuck with basics.
All the creature
Fire,
comforts.
water, exactly.
I wonder this. I've been trying to get this one gal on the show. She seems like she's pretty cool, but she's really into off-grid living. And
Okay.
I'm wondering, what is the big difference between preparedness and like the prepping fashion and just off-grid living?
Okay, so I really don't know too much about off-grid living except for that they are totally dependent on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is
Mm-hmm.
from scratch, and it's a life where you have to put a lot of work into living like that. You're completely out of society's grid, and you're on your own land, your own chicken. You're raising your own food. You're growing your own food. Your solar systems instead of electricity. You're actually going back to an old way of living, but you're free of maybe bills that other
Mm-hmm.
people may have. You dictate what you're eating and what goes into your food and what goes into your body. Um, it's just a different lifestyle. And usually from prepping, people kind of navigate to that type of lifestyle,
Yeah.
depending on how you want to take prepping with. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because from what I've seen from her, she still has certain bills, her and her family. Like they still
Mhm.
buy gas and stuff to do these, and they still buy different tech, and they'll upgrade their phones and make sure to get some sort of like internet connection so they can
Right.
post
Mhm.
and,
Right.
kind of have
Hmm.
certain creature comforts.
Hmm.
However, a lot of what they do is it's on their own land, it's away, they grow certain foods of their own, this and this and
Hmm.
that. And I think, she even has a job, like a part time job or something like in the city,
Hmm.
which is interesting because you're like, I thought
Yeah.
going off the grid was like completely independent. But I guess they're kind of like with prepping, there are levels to this thing. I suppose there's
Absolutely.
levels to that next evolution of preparedness, which is the levels of
Hmm.
off grid living. Um,
Yeah.
so, Carmen, I really appreciate you kind of
You're
getting
welcome.
into that with me. There
No
is something
problem.
else I'd love to talk with you about. Um,
Sure.
I know you mentioned that you were a corrections officer for some time,
Yeah.
and not to make it a racial thing, but it is. We have a
Hmm.
lot of animosity right now between law enforcement and society and black community versus law enforcement. And so I'm like,
Hmm.
man, like as somebody who did it for many years, I'm sure there are things that you saw that may or may not be related to race, so you don't feel obligated to go there. But
Okay. Mhm.
really, like, what did you see, and what was your experience working in corrections for as many years as you did?
Prison is like a different planet. Like when you enter in there, it's a complete different energy or vibe. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's just different because it's basically two set of people. One has their freedom taken, and then there's the other one that's in charge of them. So I've seen a lot of bad things. I've seen a lot of good things. 9 times out of 10, you don't hear any of the good things that goes on there, or you wouldn't think that anything good can go on there,
Hmm.
but it actually does. And it's a difficult job. I don't I don't I wouldn't suggest it to somebody because it does take a lot out of you, and you have to be a very strong person just to remain um decent, like sensitized after working there. A lot of people become desensitized. It's like this is everyday stuff, like that doesn't bother me. And they think like that's just how the world is, and it really isn't. You have
Yeah.
to be able to separate the two.
Yeah. Um, so what was your time like? What was a day in your life like when you would clock in? You're getting ready for work. You make your drive over, clock
Mm-hmm.
in. Does it
Look,
start there or?
your stress starts as soon as you get in your car and you know that you're driving there. And then it elevates when you get to the bridge. And I remember somebody telling me that they was like, just pay attention to yourself when you're driving over the bridge, right? And I was like very tense, like, and it automatically I did it for like a week, just paying attention to myself. I gripped the steering wheel harder. I knew what I was walking into, right? So it's unpredictable. You can have a very quiet day or you can have a day of chaos, nonstop fighting. You're seeing people cut in front of you. Like so many things that you just be like, what happened? Like, where did this go wrong? But it's so unpredictable. You can never really get yourself prepared for what's going to happen that day. You kind of just got to live like, I hope today's a good day, and move forward. Um, the bells ring. You kind of go into a mode, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. You're running into something, and it's not a good thing. You're there for long hours. Sometimes you're there for 16 hours a day.
Wow, 16 hours is a long time to be in a stressful situation.
Now you're there for 16 hours a day, and you're doing that back to back days. So sometimes you could be on for 4 days, off 2, or 5 days, which is Monday through Friday, off on the weekends. Sometimes you're there for quite a long time, and your body is in a constant state of stress, and that takes a toll on your patience. It takes a toll on problem solving sometimes because of lack of sleep, and then you get used to it. You just like, okay, 16 hours, I'm gonna knock that out, no problem. You get a routine. You have to form a relationship with everybody when you work there, your
Mhm.
coworkers as well as the individuals that are there in custody. So in order for you, well, for me, I'm going to speak for myself. In order for you to be able to navigate there, you have to understand, meet people where they're at and where they're coming from. And it's kind of like being a psychologist, being like a parent, being like the disciplinarian. It's like so many hats that you have to wear all at once and at different times and sometimes at the same time. It gets to be a lot. Um, but when you're looking at the faces and they look like your children, sometimes that hits you. Being a mom, I have a son and I'm looking at other people's children. It's you still have to do your job, which is care, custody, and control. But at some, there's certain parts of it where you kind of have to step in and do something different or outside the box to either reach that individual because you see their potential. Some of the kids inside there are extremely brilliant.
So you
You
worked
know,
with
well,
adolescents, or you worked in a youth correctional facility?
I worked with all males, high security, and then towards the ending of my career, we had the adolescents come in for a little while.
Okay.
So the adult males were easier to deal with than the young adolescent males. They were just wild and full of energy, and sometimes reasoning with them was very difficult. You kind of had to like really work with them to get them to understand something. But behind all of that, you also saw when they were in school and they did well or excelled in a certain thing, and their teachers would be like, they're really good at this. They need to come back to school, but they won't go to school because all their friends in the housing area are hanging out on the phone, doing whatever, and they want to do that. But yeah, you
It's,
gotta.
it sounds like a vicious cycle. Like some of these kids do have a chance at being something more than what their destiny would seem sealed to be. Like you end up at, like the statistics, excuse me, are pretty clear. Like
Yeah.
if a young black male goes to jail, his chances of reoffending or basically, ooh, I forgot the technical term, but ending up back in the system
Mm-hmm. It's
are
like, or
are super high. Like you'll see them
yeah.
again. Oh, I'll see you
Mm-hmm.
later here again,
Yeah.
and
It.
that's sad. Like, how do we break this?
I think it needs reform. A lot of things need reform. I think when you have individuals like, especially with the younger males, I'm gonna just touch on them for a minute. It should be it should be run like how they run the military, where they kind of break you down and then build you back up. They give you direction and focus, and this is just my opinion, and I'm speaking on that because of how the change that I saw in my son when he went to the military, and he's still in there, but I'm just looking at it at that point of view. You have to give them a purpose. You have to give them structure. When you're young, you're wild and you're free, and you just nothing can stop you, and you don't think anything can happen to you until it does. And you just make them better than what they came in. If when they come in, you're sending them right back out the same way. So how do they change? What opportunities are they given to change to be better when they get outside? Again, a lot of these individuals are born into this life and they don't know anything other until somebody shows it to them. Now, with saying that, there are absolutely some people that belong where behind bars. They do atrocious things to people, to babies, to women, to older people, to other men. They need a different type of help. I'll put it that way.
I feel like
So
people outside of whatever community is impacted by the correction system, whether that be black people or males or poor people or whatever it is that people are like, the prison system is abusing us.
right.
I feel like people outside of it look at it and like they say like, well, if you guys would just do these things, you'd be just fine. If you would stop
Yeah.
stealing, if you would stop
Mhm.
getting in gangs, if you would stop having babies, like things like
Mhm.
that. And
Right.
like clearly the situation isn't so simple. as, oh, just stop doing these things and you'll be fine, which in some ways, yes, but in a lot of ways, that's not exactly how this thing works.
No, not when you're living in a high poverty area where there's just liquor stores, two, three in the same 2 block vicinity. When you have, they're in a situation where they're just trying to survive as well. It may not be the right way to survive, but that's how they cope with things. It, a lot plays into this because to me, prison is a business, right? You
Wow.
need people to be in there in order for you to make money. So you, are you really trying to reform them, or do you want that revolving door? My opinion. People are going to, argue or agree. It's just from what I see when I go inside there. So I think that's all I'm going to say on that.
Well, I think it is unfortunate that we can even have a conversation where it's like, are profits made, prisons made for profit or X, Y, and Z? And then you watch a documentary or two and you're just like, oh, yeah, 100%. And
Right.
as somebody who worked there, I think we should maybe at least open our ears a little bit and ask the question like, hey, as somebody who worked there, maybe we should look at it twice.
Right.
You know, you can make your own choices. We're all adults and we have to make our world better or not, but I think we should at least look at it. Um, Man, so I know you talked about working with young men, and I assume just as a woman in position of authority in their lives that maybe you had to become something more than just another guard, or what were you to them?
Um, I think for a lot of people, maybe you can, like, I wasn't a person that you couldn't talk to. You can talk to me, be like, one thing about her is that you tell her something, she'll either tell you no, she can't help you, or she'll do her job. And that's one thing I firmly believe in is doing your job. That's why you're there. Because at any point in time, my son can be right where these people are, and I would hope that somebody would still treat them with respect, still be able to do their job, and at the same time, help where you can help. Like if you can do something that can change somebody's life, especially if you see that they have something, that's different about them, but they really didn't have anybody to tell them that or, push them in that direction, that we should, as I'm always going to be a mom first before I'm a correction officer. You understand? So
Yeah,
if I see something that I can change, that's what I'm going to do.
yeah,
I can only do it for so many people. I'm one person, but there's so many other people like that. There's so many other correction officers and captains that I know that go out their way to help people, but you can only help them so much because you are still under care, custody, and control.
hmm,
And then you don't want to have the label of being too friendly with the inmates, especially being a female. So sometimes it's a hard road to walk, but I don't think a lot of people wake up and say, "Oh, I just want to go to work and fuck." I'm sorry, and make somebody's life difficult. You know what I'm saying? So I apologize for that. I know I didn't wake up to do that. Do I have bad days? Yes, everybody does. But it's all how you deal with people. And I think the way that I handle people, my time there wasn't as crazy as it could be. There were some crazy times, a
yeah,
lot of them, but you kind of have a reputation. They talk, and they will tell, listen, don't play with her. She's by the books, but, don't play with her or wait for her to come because she'll help you. She'll get you to where you got to go. And there's so many other people like that in the department that you don't know of. I knew of a correction officer who he wanted to implement a program where he wanted to work with the men, teaching them how to tie a tie. There was people in there that didn't know how to tie a tie or a basic
wow,
handshake when they do an interview or how to do an interview. And he was willing to do that on his time, but that was denied. So there's a
mm,
lot of stories like that. And people don't get to hear it. And this is people that's taking their money. Like he was willing to collect suit jackets, shirts, and belts and things like that to show them when you go into an interview, you look the person in the eye, your hand, don't do a handshake like this. You shake it firmly. There was a lot of people that were willing to teach, but you're still confined under certain rules or regulations, and you can't do that if you don't get approval for it.
Yeah, I think that's very difficult to hear because I've worked with young men and kids who are at risk or maybe just need a little guidance here or there. And I've worked in schools and after school programs, and it's so hard to see kids who they could have a future if
Yeah,
only they would either embrace it or be given an additional opportunity. And one after school program isn't going to change everything for them. And it could,
right.
but you need some consistency because after a kid leaves your program, what's he going to? Is he going to hang out with some friends who are going to lead him astray again, or is he going to go to some parents who are going to literally steal their medication or and sell it? Like, what are you running into? And to have maybe to be in a place where honestly, like if you're there, you're kind of running out of hope.
Yeah,
But to have a little bit of hope in there, it's like, hey man, if you can get out of here, if you just look at the way I'm wearing this suit, wear it like me, you'll have a
yeah,
little bit better chance to get a good job so you don't have to go back and do stuff to get a little extra fast money because you literally have no money. Like
right. Hmm.
to say like this is how you tie a tie. I know that's you're not going to think about going on YouTube to do this. Like this is what you do. This will
Right.
give you a good chance. Or like this is how you do a good corporate handshake. Like it's not white people stuff. This is successful people stuff. Like this is how you do it. And to be said,
Exactly.
nah, fam, like we can't be
Right.
doing all this stuff for these kids. Like,
Right.
now you're doing too much. Like, bro, that's some BS, man. Like, bro, let the
Yeah.
man help these kids.
Yep.
Let me let
Exactly.
me stop getting upset on this podcast. It's a happy event.
And you see how upset you were. There was so many of us that were like so upset, and we're just like, it's sometimes it's heartbreaking because when you hear people say, oh, they don't do anything, that's not true. And sometimes you need light in darkness.
Mm,
There's a lot of good people in corrections. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that don't do their jobs or overextend what their job title is, but there's still people inside there that go into a dark place and are lights for people, make it that much easier to deal with what it is. Talking somebody down from trying to kill themselves, that's a hard thing. Or walking in with somebody that's, has a noose around their neck and they're trying to,
mm,
end it, and having to follow up with that person, like go out your way and be like, listen, are you good? How you doing today? Listen, one day at a time. If you can't do one day at a time, do a half an hour at a time, do
wow.
15 minutes at a time. you know Try to get them involved with something else so it takes their mind off of them, because there's still people too. Again, when I say this, there are people that belong there, because sometimes the only time a victim gets a chance to breathe or heal or relax is when a particular individual is behind bars.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from that point of view. It's a tough place to be. You really have to, work on keeping your humanity when you're in there, because you see a lot of things and you read a lot of things, and sometimes some things can just get you, even though you try to remain with the cure, custody, and control.
I wonder how does one not look at people and stereotype them, not see like, okay, I see all these inmates kind of have a certain look, not necessarily color or complexion, but like they like this style, they talk in this fashion, they do these things.
Right.
That's what a criminal is, and then see that in your everyday life, walking down the street in a parking lot at Walmart or whatever, and not just classify people as these things that belong in prison.
Right. Sometimes I think how you grew up and where you live, a lot of these individuals are people that you see every day you walk out your door. You know,
Mm,
they look a certain way, but sometimes I've seen drug dealers feed an entire block
wow.
on a block, you know what I'm saying, and make sure the kids have a great Thanksgiving or a block party because they don't have anything. But I'm not condoning that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, sometimes I've seen really good things out of people, quote unquote, that people will say are blights on society. And I've seen some people that you
Mm,
would think are great people do some of the most horrific things to other people. And it's a crazy world. You just got to go in there and you have to treat people accordingly. You got to talk to them. You're not going to be able to talk to everybody because that's like impossible. But the ones that kind of stick out, because not everybody comes in there on the rah rah. You have some very quiet people, you have some loud people. Usually the loud ones, once you talk to them and you get to know them, you build a relationship with them, a rapport, and when things go crazy, you can actually talk to them and talk it down or
yeah.
work it out. Um, then you have some that are just mentally not there, so they're just unpredictable, and things can go either way. It's a tough place to be. It's not easy, but there's people that get up every day and do it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for talking with me about that. I know it can be a difficult subject, even for me who I wasn't in it, but just kind of looking from the outside in, and even
Mm-hmm.
for people who are just listening, maybe they have a friend or a relative or a child who found their way into the system. What would you say to a parent who, and we'll end it at this. What would you say to a parent who has a child who is either looking at entering the system through their actions, or maybe they're in a case right now, or maybe a kid is going to be there for a little while? Like, what would you say to a parent?
Um, Visit day, make sure you get there so you can get a visual on your child or
Mm-hmm.
your loved one. Because I worked with males for a majority of my career. Adolescents came in at the ending part. Um, the contact, just sitting with them for 5 minutes means a lot to them. Phone calls, you have fights over phone call time because they want to, that's their connection to home. They're outside of their element. It's hard, the hardest ones,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, I got to talk to my mom. Why did you hit him like that? Well, he's on the phone. This is the only time my mom is home. So I needed to talk to my mother.
Wow.
Like you hear the craziest things, and sometimes you're just like, he just wanted to talk to his mom, or something like that. It's such a tough place because sometimes it is very violent because things come from the street in there and they have to follow through. If they don't follow through, they become the victim. It's such a crazy world to be in.
Wow.
We really need to just, pay attention to our kids, even to the school system. That's set up as well. Because you just got to pay attention to your kids. School is looking more like jails than schools. Metal detectors. You have all this going on in a school. We're like, how do we lose that? But at the end of the day, you have to put some time into your kids. I know it's hard because parents are working. They have
Mm-hmm.
or single parents. It's only one parent. This is where community comes back into play. Growing up, you couldn't do anything in the block. Miss Johnson already told your mother, call the jobs. Like we had contact with the parents had their own network. You
Yeah.
couldn't do too much. Nowadays, times have changed. Of course, you have kids raising kids, and that has changed. But maybe we need to go back if we're trying to save our children.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I do know some young kids, teenagers in high school, who have the parental number one role, and it's like, bro, like that's not your responsibility. You need to be in school. Maybe get you a little summer job, a little boyfriend or something. And it's like, not necessarily saying that needs to happen, but like you need to be a kid,
Your kid, exactly. And then, the
not
music
raising
plays a part.
kids.
Exactly. Music is plays a big part in it. Certain music glorifies things that they think is cool, and it's
Yeah.
not. Like,
But isn't the music a part of our culture? Like, how could you say that the music is bad? It's what we do.
yeah, but we should have responsibility with what we're putting out.
Yeah.
Because kids, they're listening to it over and over. Every time you see a teenager, it's earphones in and blasting music. the quality of music, what the music is saying, because that's repeated in the child's mind. Children are sponges, they're going to pick up on things. And if you're not there to correct certain things, or somebody's not there to correct certain things or limit certain things, they think that this is the way of life. You know what I'm saying? It's embedded in them after a while. This is how you talk to each other. This is how, I'm supposed to behave when I'm around, other men, or this is how I'm supposed to treat women, because, the music is there. TV, what they watch, all of that plays a big part in molding who they become as adults. And even some adults, listen to this stuff and they think like that's a great life. It's not.
Mm.
Certain, not all music, particularly the music that our kids listen to. You turn on a video and you see your young girls barely dressed, dancing to this music and things like that, and you have like little young girls trying to do the same dance. That's not for you. You have to be a kid.
Yeah,
So,
it is hard. And, Dr. Max and I, we just got off a call and we talked about this, and it's so hard to watch this people. And it's like, well, at a certain point, you think that, oh, well, people get it. It's not real. It's just music. But when your music reflects what you actually see, how is it not real? How
right.
is it not real? It's the same thing. They're just telling their story. It's poetry. And then if you just kind of feed your soul with that, and I do believe in feeding your soul with certain stuff. Like if you feed yourself with negativity, you will become inherently more negative. And if you feed yourself with a lot of positivity, it will infect you some way, somehow. So choose your infection, pick your poison.
I agree. TVs or social media, a lot of these things, they're called a program for a reason. You can program young minds, and it may not be programming them in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, we do desensitize ourselves with social media, people getting, like, we see so many people just in the firearms community. We see so many people getting killed on a regular basis. And we watch it for educational purposes.
Right.
But
It does
how,
get.
how, how, how educational is it really? Or are we just watching people get murdered in cold blood and we're just getting used to seeing it? So that's me calling us out in case anybody's wondering. And in no uncertain terms, we got to watch a little bit less of these
Yeah.
things. And for the young kids listening to the music, if you're listening to this, you can listen to something else. I promise you're still cool. You're still cool in my book. So
I think so. And there's some young rappers out here that really have some good music and completely different from the music that we're talking about. I think Star Ringo is his name. Like amazing music, but and his message is amazing.
I
I,
gotta look that up. I don't think I've
yeah,
heard of
Star
that
Ringo.
before.
Yeah, definitely. Matter of fact, I'll send you his link. But
Please, yeah,
yeah, you know what? Let me know what you think about it when you after you hear it
I will. I'm
and
gonna turn it on as
what
soon as
I'm
we get
thinking
done.
about. Yeah, it
Oh
definitely.
man.
There's a lot of young kids that's doing great things, producing like really good music. Not to take anything away from them,
Hmm.
but they don't mainstream those kids. And
Hmm.
then if they get into the music world, then they want to change their appearance. They want to change the things that they say because that's what the music world does.
Right.
They don't let the artist be the artist and do what they originally were, set out to do. They're just thinking about the dollars, and the artist now just becomes a product that's going to make them money.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's so weird, like just kind of going back to like music culture and how kids interact with it, especially the more profane the better. And I'm not saying like you can't say a bad word, like you can say what you need to say, but I'm saying like for if as a kid, like if I didn't think a certain way or describe things in a certain fashion, like relationships with women or certain stuff, is like you're a punk. Like,
Yeah.
oh, why would you don't like these things? Oh, you're weird. Like I'm
Yeah.
not like the old days where kids would peer pressure into like smoking cigarettes, like back in the black and white days. Like, bro, like why is that cool? It's not cool. Like it's not cool to smoke cigarettes.
Right.
Like growing up, there is such pressure to like do wild and dumb stuff, and it's still here. It hasn't changed. For all the parents listening, it hasn't changed. It's the same.
Is the
Keep an eye on your kids, please. Golly.
stuff. Yeah,
If,
they're our future. When we're old and gray, they're the ones making
well,
decisions for us. And
unfortunately, if you're old and gray and your kids are still in jail, like you got bigger problems at this point.
wait, they're the legacy. We got to put a little bit more care and time into them.
Yeah.
And I know
Wow.
it's hard for a lot of people
No,
because they're.
it's so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So hard. But yeah, wow. Sorry to leave it on a weird note.
Okay.
We'll cap it here, and I think this would be a good conversation to answer some questions on. So if anybody has any interesting questions, they could leave it in the comments below. Hit us up on socials and stuff like that. Ask, and depending on how it goes, if people want to maybe bring you in to have a private conversation, we do have a Patreon group where people can request to bring on certain guests, and if that's something people want to do, we can ask you more questions about what it is to be into preparedness, or how to
Okay.
be, what the corrections world looks like, or of course your takes on society and kids and culture. I think you have some really interesting ideas on culture that we barely scratch the surface on. Um, I will ask you this: how can people find you? Or do you want to be found? Like, what's going on?
Right now, I'm working on my channel right now, my prepping channel. So I'm actually taking a week off just to focus on that and not do anything else.
Oh, cool.
But usually I'm Carbon Q on YouTube and on Instagram, same name. That's
Carbon
about
Q.
it.
There you
Just
go.
Carbon.
Well, I appreciate you so much for coming
Thank you so
on,
much
and it's been fun. I'm so glad we had this conversation.
too. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Uh,
Thank you everyone for your time.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep it costly.